One of my CEOs said to me, Mike, sometimes you've just got to grab onto somebody's coattails and go for the ride. And it turned out to be some of the best advice I ever got in my life. I talked to a billionaire about 10 years ago, met many of them, but this guy said to me, do you know the difference between billionaires and millionaires? And I went, no, because I'm not a billionaire, right? So I don't know the difference. He said, billionaires are 10 times more decisive. If the internet is so good and technology is so great, why are almost all of us no better off than our parents or grandparents were?
Before we start this podcast, I have one small favor to ask you. Can you please hit the subscribe button down below so that we can help more people every week? Thank you. Welcome to the Right Place podcast, where we learn with you how to make connections that last, relationships that matter, and businesses that thrive. My name is John Watson, and today I'm talking to Mike Handcock, chairman at the Circle of Excellence Group, multi-award-winning international speaker, author, rock star, and president-elect of the Global Speakers Federation. Mike, great to chat to you today.
John, it's lovely to be on the call today, and welcome to all our listeners.
Thank you so much, Mike. Now, Mike, you co-founded the Conscious Leadership Movement. Can you take me back to that pivotal moment that started this and that led you to champion this approach?
Conscious leadership, John, was something that I became interested in maybe 15 years ago, and it was a term that was not really being used at all. And I always thought of conscious leadership as a leader who wanted to have so much more impact on the planet than just, an ordinary person. Then in 2016, Forbes brought out a magazine with an article about conscious leadership, and I thought it was such a great article. It said that conscious leadership is not about saving the world. It's about a leader's journey and preparedness to do the deep journey within inside themselves so that they can turn up as the best and most authentic version of themselves. And it really had 5 key points to it, which was having a purposeful vision, having values-based leadership, having a collaborative mindset rather than a competitive mindset, making a difference every day, and the fact that a leader should be legacy focused and leave the world in a better place than when they came. And Landi, my wife, and I were in America in early 2017. We were there for about 4 months working, and we were talking about this article, and we said we should really start a conscious leadership movement. And so initially what we did is we reached out to people in our ecosystem and said, would you like to be a founding member of the conscious leadership movement? And I don't think we had anybody say no. So we ended up with founding members, like we had the greenest man on the planet. He's a founding member. We had one of the founders of MTV. He's a founding member, a good friend of ours. We had somebody who just won awards from Queen Elizabeth on entrepreneurship. She's a founding member. So from that, then just other people came and joined. And, we really shifted our vision for the Circle of Excellence Group, our organization, to focus on creating 432 conscious leaders that would affect over 1 million people, which is a country about the size of Estonia, during our business life. Now, it might not sound a lot, 432, and I hear a lot of people say, I'm going to affect tens of millions of people, but we just felt we'd get real about it. We have our own way of knowing whether we feel somebody's a conscious leader, and just because they say they are doesn't mean in our definition they are. So that's been the journey we're on. We're about halfway there.
Okay, excellent. And when you say you're about halfway there, what are the timelines looking like for you to reach that target of the people that you want to affect?
Well, I think it's speeding up now. So I would assume in another 3 or 4 years we would have achieved what we want to achieve. And a conscious leader for us is somebody who's impacting an industry. I won't use the word disrupting because disruption is not always good, but impacting an industry that they are truly leaving a footprint that is lasting and that can have a really great effect. Now, you're a podcaster, you could say there are podcasters out there that are really conscious leaders. I mean, maybe it's Joe Rogan, maybe it's Russell Brand, maybe it's somebody else, maybe it's Lewis Howes, who knows? But you know, it doesn't mean that you have to have a company worth $1 billion to be a conscious leader. I mean, some of the conscious leaders that we're working with, you know, some of them have got big companies. We've got one I was talking to yesterday. He's got a company he's listing on the New York Stock Exchange. He's from Cape Town, actually. But then we've got others who are coaching. And so, but what they're doing is really significant and really profound. So, yeah, I think it's definitely speeding up now. And also, you know, consciousness as a word is much more acceptable than what it was when I first sort of started thinking about it 15 years ago or so. But I have to tell you that by the same token, it's very misunderstood.
No, I can imagine. I think a lot of research has taken place. I mean, we see Dr. Joe Dispenza coming out with new research all the time. People are a lot more comfortable talking about meditation, mental health, mental well-being, safe spaces, and all of that. And I think the conscious leadership movement can have a pivotal role in just helping people find their right place, but also helping them uncover who they actually are and the skills and the talents that are within them.
Absolutely.
Now, Mike, at the right place, we believe everyone should have an excellent circle of diverse people in their network. How does the circle of excellence help business owners connect with the right people?
Well, I loved what you said when you said we should have a unique, diverse group of people in our circle, because you know, our history, and we're almost 20 years old, so we've been doing this a long time. It hasn't always been branded Circle of Excellence, but the fundamental business is almost 20 years old. And in that time, we've run over 3,000 events in more than 50 countries. One day when I was bored a few months back, I started sort of adding them up. And like I've been to 20 countries more than 20 times. So, you know, one example of that would be India. I've been there 22 times. I mean, I'm in Singapore next month. I've been there over 50 times, you know. So when you do that, and when you're running events, and when you're building businesses in those countries, and we've got companies in Ireland, the UK, New Zealand, and South Africa, our main ones. Malaysia's the other one. When you're doing that, you just get to know people. So the circle of excellence, coming back to your question, has fingers in many, many countries around the world. And it's not that, you know, they're friends on our Facebook or our LinkedIn. I mean, if you say who's great in the startup space in Turkey, I can tell you who's great in Istanbul. If you're asking me, you know, who's a phenomenal person to connect with in Vancouver, I can tell you some really great people in Vancouver because we know them personally. So in what we do with our inner circle members, which are our sort of top tier clients, is we'll connect them with anybody in the world. And just this week, I connected one of our clients with somebody in, he's South African based, with somebody in New Zealand and somebody in the Netherlands. And he came back to me straight afterwards and he said, man, these are such great people. We had a client in Malaysia launch an international fashion brand, and I did everything with the launch and even got in spread in Vogue magazine, and all of it was through their Circle of Excellence contacts, the whole thing.
No, that's excellent, Mike. That's excellent. Now, I heard about the Circle of Excellence the first time from René Lombard. He was also in the book that you launched, I think earlier this year or late last year. And I know it offers quite a unique business system. What do you think is so unique about it that business owners resonate with it and want to join the Circle of Excellence?
I think because, firstly, we don't have any competition anywhere in the world. So I've never come across it. There's not an organization that competes with us. Because from a business perspective, somebody can come to us and we have information on the whole A to Z of everything you need to do in business, whether it's business strategy, customer service, smart marketing, sales, team building. You know, we've just been so exposed. And so we have over 140 business systems that we can just plug and play. And if we looked at Rainier's, I mean, that was a very interesting one. We plugged and played our partners system straight into him immediately, that we got the strategy system right. And I mean, his business is 15 times what it used to be 3.5 years ago. And then that's coupled with not only the mindset side of things, which is hugely important for entrepreneurs. I mean, if your mind is not right, doesn't matter how hard you work or how good your system is, you're not going to get there. but we're very holistic at the same time. So I think many people would be surprised that most of our discussions, like I just got off a call earlier just before this recording with a client of ours from Australia, and we're talking about revolutionary medical technology system that they're working on there. But actually what we spent most of the call talking about was spirituality. So I think, what we do, and it was fascinating for us, John, that during COVID, we thought we even brought something out which we sold. It was an online product called the Business Survival Blueprint, because we just went into all of our archives and we went, okay, people need to survive during this time when you can't step outside your house. What do they need to do? And we came up with this blueprint and we gave it to all of our inner circle members for free. And it triggered some conversations, but I can promise you, we didn't have one conversation about business. We had conversations like, do you think I was a rabbit in a past life? Or what's my relationship with my father doing to me now and it's triggering me in lockdown, and all those sorts of things, because, we are just spirits having a human experience. And that human experience would involve us being in business and would involve us having to network, grow businesses, market, sell, design products, and all of those sort of things. But inherently, when we die, they're all going to become part of our soul experience. So I think we're very unique in the fact that we have the expertise and team to delve into all of those aspects with an individual.
No, I think that's wonderful, Mike. And I like what you said there about spiritual beings having a physical experience. The first time I heard that concept was at the Billionaire Mindset seminar with Daniel Strauss. And it's actually very deep. We go about our days, we run our businesses and everything, but all of that is coming from within us. And if your mindset's not right, if your spiritual foundation is not right, you're going to not be necessarily in your right frame of mind to make better decisions, to connect with the right people, to attract the right capital opportunities to yourself. So you need to take care of the inside, and the better you do that, I think, the better the outside will operate.
And I think it's far more than that in some respects. And I agree with you, John, that you're 100% right. But for a listener to listen to that, they say, okay, I've got to get my mind right. I've got to get centered and all of that sort of stuff. It's more than that. It's about the concept of flow. And with the concept of flow's like a river, right? And, sometimes when the river's running the fastest and you're in the most flow, it's pretty bumpy. Yet, so people don't like to be bumped, so they tend to hang on to the sides of the river, but that's where all the debris sort of goes. And a lot of people try and grab hold of their patch and hold on to it. That's like damming their part of the river, but then they stop flow. So what we really think is, we really say, look for the signs and symbols that the universe, God, or whatever you believe in, is putting in front of you every day, and let that be your guide. Let that be your guide. And fascinating for us is, we were talking before and you said I'm off to Paris in a couple of weeks. That's part of a longer road trip we're doing that starts in Bali. But initially we didn't have to go to Paris, but Landi and I said, okay, we've got a spare week. Essentially, it was a bit more than a week. And should we come back to South Africa and then fly up to the other place, or where should we go? And so we literally got a map out and looked at it and went, let's just go to France. There was no rhyme or reason. I mean, France is a place I've been to more than 10 times. So Landi's been probably 5 times. So there was no necessarily reason to go there. But the minute we said that, the minute people started, strangely enough, the next day people reached out and said, when are you going to be in France next? We would like to get you to do this. And can we meet with you on that? And so now I'm going, like, right now I'm looking at it going, I'm really hoping that we get 3 free days to look around Paris a bit and, take a boat ride on the Seine or something like that. And if you allow flow to occur, guide your business, which is not easy if you're a corporate listening to this, but you can do it. But very easy if you're an owner operator of a business, doesn't matter how big it is. If you allow that flow to happen, then you'll be very, very surprised by the successes that just pop up along the way. So it's about having the mindset right. It's about setting the stage, but it's also about being aware of what the universe is presenting to you.
No, I really like that answer. And sometimes we just need to take that first step. If we see something or we hear something, just hey, what's actually going on here? Let me investigate that further, or let me book that plane ticket, or let me follow up with that person. And that just sets off a whole chain of events. And then when you look back, you're like, I'm so glad that happened. I'm so glad I listened to myself. I'm so glad I took that first step, because look what happened.
I call them critical moments. You know, when I worked in corporate, and I left corporate in 2002 or 3, 2002, I think. But before that, I was general manager, sales and marketing of the biggest financial services company in New Zealand. And one of my CEOs, my favorite CEO, hope he's not listening to this, but because then he'll know he's my favorite. But one of my CEOs said to me, Mike, sometimes you've just got to grab onto somebody's coattails and go for the ride. And it turned out to be some of the best advice I ever got in my life. And what he was really saying is, if something or somebody resonates with you, don't question what it costs, what it is, anything like that. Just grab it, go for a ride and see where it takes you. Well, I did that in 2003, and it led me to where I am now. And I consistently do it now as well. And I can just see how it works. And I can see how it's worked for people who, if I look at Rainier, who you mentioned before, and I mean, Rainier runs a wonderful business, FDC it's called, based out of Cape Town. He's a specialist in LinkedIn. They have about 75 staff now that just make your LinkedIn sing and, bring you lots of business. But it's not the only thing that he does. But when I look at when I first met him, he came to one of our business masterminds. And, it was really there initially about, guys, I don't know why, but I just want to work with you. He said that. He said, I just want to work with you. I don't care what it costs. He goes, there's just something here. I want to work with you. Now here we are 3.5 years later, business has gone from 6 staff to 75. He's got a footprint in every major market in the world. Now, I'm not saying we did all of that. We were part of it. And we're probably there for some of the key parts or the key decisions of it in terms of strategy and what should happen. But part of it is just going for the ride and see what happens. And those critical moments, they happen in real estate all the time. You talk to real estate agents, I'll tell you this. They get clients that come to a house and they go, oh my gosh, this is my dream home. This is everything I've ever wanted. How much is it? And they go, it's X. We go, oh, let me think about that. I need to talk to my bank. Can I come back to you next week? Sure. No, I've talked to my bank and I'm good to go. I really want this in my dream house. Sorry, we sold it in the afternoon to somebody who made a decision just like that. That happens to them almost weekly to a real estate agent. So, I remember, John, and now I'll throw it back to you because I know you've got a lot more questions, but I talked to a billionaire about 10 years ago, met many of them, but this guy said to me, do you know the difference between billionaires and millionaires? And I went, no, because I'm not a billionaire, right? So I don't know the difference. He said, billionaires are 10 times more decisive. He said, he was in his late 60s at the time I met him. He's probably 80 now if he's still alive. And he said, he's slowing down. It took him 5 minutes to make a decision to do a $110 million deal. He's never, ever had a deal that's taken that long. And this is a guy born in South Africa in the townships. So he's doesn't come from wealth, but he made his money and through hotels and shopping centers and private jets and things like that. And he's telling me he's never taken more than a few seconds to make a decision.
No, that's a wonderful story, Mike. And I heard a quote the other day, and I've heard it many times before. I think it was Seth Godin that said, you don't need more time. You need to make a decision. And if you've got 80% of the information and you're across the line, you can figure out the minor details later on. But if this is a good thing and there's no logical reason not to do it, then just do it. You can still figure it out. But the decision puts so many things in action and starts almost the roller coaster of the process and things starting to fall in place. But you have to make a decision.
Absolutely, you do. And, everybody just read Richard Branson's first book or whatever it was, when he made a decision to start Virgin Airlines. He knew nothing about airline business. But then he went and did his due diligence afterwards, after he'd made the decision. Most people do all the due diligence and never come to a decision.
No, my favorite story on that is from Nick Dreyer, the CEO of Veldschoen. He spoke at the Clara Business Network last year, and he told the founder's story, and he said they sold 300 pairs of shoes before they even made a pair of shoes. They just decided,
Yep.
we need to make felt spoon, we need to start this. And then once they pre-sold, they said, okay, now we have to kind of figure out how to make shoes. And then they did that. But they didn't wait and do hours and hours of research and then, okay, now we're ready. They were never ready from the get-go. And I think that's the beauty in the story. Like, you get ready when you decide.
I think a lot of great entrepreneurs have the same story, John. And when I read Walt Disney's biography, it's just exactly that. I mean, he turned around and said to his brother, he said, I've taken an option on, I think it was 50 hectares of land in Anaheim. And I did this drawing, and he held up a drawing of a castle. And he said, I need you to raise me $5 million by tomorrow morning to secure the land. This is in 1952. I mean, imagine how much money that was. And his brother looked at him, who was his CFO, and said, are you freaking crazy? I'm never going to be able to do that. He said, well, you better, because there's 48 PR and television people coming to the site, and I'm launching it tomorrow morning. And so that today is Disneyland. And if you go to Disneyland today, you'll go, the oldest ride there is called A Small, Small World. And when you go on the ride, it says in the middle of the ride, sponsored by the Ford Motor Company. And that's who they got $5 million from in 24 hours before Walt did that. So every single thing he did, he sold the rights to Snow White based on 3 drawings of her that he did. And he hadn't even created the film or had anybody who could animate it.
No, that's unbelievable, Mike. That's unbelievable. Now, Mike, you mentioned your wife, and she's very active on social media. She's a speaker in her own right and a businesswoman as well. Can you tell me a bit about you being a dynamic duo, being a power couple, and just how that all works? Because not everybody feels comfortable working with their spouse, their partner, on a day-to-day basis, but it seems to be working for you.
It works tremendously. And it's interesting, I was watching a preview of the movie Reagan with Dennis Quaid that's coming out. It looks very good, by the way. And in there, they were talking about the love story. Part of Reagan's success, a large part of his success, was the love story between him and his wife, Nancy and Ronald Reagan. And as I watched that, it triggered to me that's a large part of our success is our love story between us. I mean, we're never apart, I think she just stepped outside to go to the car, but apart from that, we're never apart. So it's almost rare that you'll ever see us apart. So she's an incredibly intelligent woman, beautiful, obviously, and commercially very savvy and extremely spiritual. So I think from that space, I mean, we're actually astrologically dynamic opposites. We're called a grand cross. In fact, when we got together, we hired Angelina Jolie's astrologer to give us a reading, and she said, you two are either going to kill each other or you're going to be an amazing love story. Luckily, it's been the latter. So I think it's just about allowing your significant other, whether it's male, female, to have the space to become the best that they can be and to support them 100%. Even if they mess up, and that goes 2 ways. Not always, Landi doesn't mess up. I mess up a lot more than she does. And to just remember that this is a journey you're having together. And if you can remember that your spirit's having a human experience, then you don't have the attachment to what goes right or wrong on a daily basis. And the other thing for us is, we're really good at just not talking about work after hours. We don't sort of sit around the TV at night going, what about, John, what's he doing, et cetera, et cetera. We just don't talk about that.
No, that's wonderful, Mike. It's wonderful to be able to build a business, build a movement with someone so close to you. And you've traveled all over the world with each other. You've seen each other in different situations. Is there maybe a funny story where she had to rescue you out of a tricky situation, or vice versa?
Actually, no. I would not say, not one that comes to mind about rescuing out of a tricky situation, but we often laugh about the situations that we find each other in together. And because we're inquisitive and we love the world, and I've been to 114 countries. Landi's well over 50 now. So because of that, we're always seeking truth in those countries, and we're always seeking people who have the truth in those countries. So, we've found ourselves meeting with various imam in Morocco, listening to them about their version of the Quran. We've met with the head of the Hare Krishnas in India and had tea there. And, we've done a lot of those sort of things, and worked with people who own crystal skulls and stuff like that. And because of that, we always walk out of there and go, just another day in the life of Mike and Landi, right? So, as weird and wacky and wonderful as it may be. And then we have very funny experiences. And I think, I remember clearly that we were in New Zealand, and I'd been trying to get a hold of this particular individual that I wanted to do a joint venture with. And he was ghosting me. I hate people who ghost me. So I'd sort of given up on him after 3 tries, and we got to this function. We were invited to this function, and lo and behold, he's there. And so we wander over, and he's like, Mike, Landi, how are you? So good to see you, blah, 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 being all friendly in front of the other people. And Landi says to him, wow, you're so friendly now, but you're not friendly on email, are you? And he's like, what do you mean? She goes, you've been ghosting Mike. He's been trying to reach out to get a meeting for us on this trip, and you've just not replied. Is that how you normally respond? And he just went, oh, no, I've been really busy, etc. Let's set it up now. I'll make sure he's out with his phone right now and set up the meeting, which was, so, we find ourselves in those situations that are just fun, because I think we're not shy people. We're not people who sit back and take a second seat or anything, You've got to have confidence in business, and nobody's better than you and nobody's worse than you. Everybody's just the same. So, just treat people as you want to be treated yourself. And if people are being stupid, then call them out on it or eject them from your life.
No, that's excellent, Mike. I think that's really great advice there. Mike, let's change gears again. What do you see as the most common obstacle facing businesses in 2024? And given your expertise and background, how are you helping these businesses through the challenges?
I think the answer is overwhelm. And it comes in different disguises: anxiety, depression, not knowing what to do. But it's overwhelm. I'll give it a fundamental umbrella of overwhelm. And this is a rhetorical question for the listeners. If the internet is so good and technology is so great, why are almost all of us no better off than our parents or grandparents were? Why are we living the same lives? Do we have a better house, really, given the times? I mean, I know we've got more technology in it. I mean, I know we've got Alexa or Siri, which they didn't have, but really, is it any better than what they had? And do we have more time than they had if we're so smart? The answer is no, right? The answer is we have less time in 2024, 2025 than what we had in 1956. Those people came home on a Friday night, they spent it with their families. They didn't sit on a laptop on Saturday morning doing those sort of things. So I think that, the problem with an AI is making it even worse. I think the problem with the system that we've created for ourselves is there are just too many options and too many bright, shiny objects and too many things. And, if you're a small business owner now, are you expected to be a podcaster, a YouTuber, a telescoper, a LinkedIn expert, a Facebook expert, run your business, have 3 new products, come in every week, come up with new ideas, attend your BNI network? How are you ever going to do this? So it's going to drive you insane. So I think less is more. When it comes to overwhelm, here's some great statistics that are going to back up what I say. I know these statistics off the top of my head because I use them in some talks. Rescue Time, which is an app that you can put on your computer. I have it on my computer. I've had it since 2015. Will tell you where you're spending your time. They came out with some data last year based on their 150 million users. So that's good data, right? Did you know that the average person picks up their cell phone every 6 minutes? The average person, based on their parameters that they put into Rescue Time, only spends 2 hours and 36 minutes a day doing anything remotely productive. So we sort of broke that down. I want to give you a background to this from our perspective, John. Back in 2015, Andy and I were in 40 countries that year, 40 countries. And so I added it up because this is how my mind works. And I went, my darling, do you know that we're spending 6.5 weeks inside an aeroplane this year? If you think about how much flying you do and add up all the hours, it turned out to 6.5 weeks inside the plane. It's like crazy, right? So how are you ever going to run 5 businesses, which is what we have, and do everything else you're meant to do if you're spending 6.5 weeks inside an airplane and visiting 40 countries and you actually want to see some of them at the same time? We had to come up with a different system. And at the time she was saying, do you have a to-do list? And I said, yeah, of course I have a to-do list. She says, well, why do you have one? I said, because I guess somebody taught it to me in my 20s and it seemed like a good idea. And she said, why do you like failing every day? And I went, what do you mean? She said, well, how many things are on your to-do list? I looked and I said, probably 20. She said, so you're going to do 20 things today? No. So therefore you're going to fail. By the end of the week, how many of those things are you going to tick off and how many new ones go put on? So I started seeing a reason that we have to come up with a new system. So we came up with a new system. I'm going to give you a snapshot of it here today because it's, most people who look at this system takes them a little while to get it. But it's just 4 categories: things you want to get, things you want to groom, things you want to grow, and things that are going to be really like solid blocks of gold, like the golden egg for you. Okay. So we call it the 4 Gs. And for most things people want to get is they want to get more revenue, more money. People in business want more revenue, more money. Sometimes they want more time, but normally it's more money. So what we ask people to do is we ask them to just take a note. Rescue time is something very useful from a perspective of online to see where you're using your time. We do it with sticky notes. So at the moment I'm doing a podcast. So I'd write a podcast sticky note. Okay. Then after this, I've got a new prospective client meeting. So I go new prospective client meeting. So then over a period of a couple of weeks, I'll have maybe 30 sticky notes. Then I'll take the sticky notes and put them in each column: get, groom, grow, and go for gold. And so ultimately, in the first 2 columns, get, it's sales meetings. That's getting. There's probably not much else, to be honest. In the groom column, it's grooming relationships. Now, this could be seen as grooming relationships. At the very least, I'm grooming a relationship with you. But then, events could be grooming relationships. Having dinner with your mum is grooming a relationship. Doing some customer service work for a specific customer, which talking to them, is grooming a relationship. Ultimately, when you do this, you find, and we've done it with so many entrepreneurs, most entrepreneurs spend 80% of their time in the 3rd column, which is called grow. They work on their social media. They do some research. They're training themselves. They're putting something on their website. They're doing a social media post. And the gold stuff is like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to bring out a whole new product range. I'm going to make a movie or something big. Whereas all we did is we shifted 80% of our time to get and groom. And we outsourced all the grow. And it gave us all our time back. So it's very rare we work a Friday. Tomorrow we're working on, we've got an event on, but I think it's about another, we probably work 5 Fridays a year, maybe 6 Fridays a year. So we work Monday to Thursday. We don't work weekends generally. We might work a couple a year, but that would be about it. Where we've got events on, that would be the only time. The 4 Gs has enabled us to do that. And this came from John, and then I'll finish up on this. Back in 2015, when I was looking at this, and I then put rescue time on my computer. At that stage, I was averaging about 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day on my laptop at that point. And 46% of my time, and I remember the statistic clearly, so about 2.5 hours a day was spent on design. This is me, a guy who's meant to be all the things that you said at the start, running all these businesses, and I'm a designer. And so I'm going like, this is crazy. So what am I designing? Oh, I'm doing a Facebook campaign. I'm doing a keynote. So I want a new slide for that. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So we just instantly went out and hired a designer. We just went and hired one. Gave me 2.5 hours a day back.
No, that's
amazing,
what
businesses are faced with today. It's the overwhelm is keeping people stuck, and they feel that they have to be things that they don't have to be.
No, absolutely. And I think it's important to understand, what are you good at? Focus on that. Make sure you tick in the four boxes here, and there's a good balance between them to achieve your objectives and your strategy. But then outsource your weaknesses, outsource the things that you hate doing, outsource the things that really bring you down or waste your energy or take up your golden hours in the morning or in the afternoons, when you could be focusing on the growing and on the gold as well.
Absolutely. I have a saying I've said for many years that if you work on your weaknesses, you only end up with stronger weaknesses. But if you work on your strengths, you end up with stronger strengths. But I think what's important in what you say as well is that a lot of people will go, I don't like sales, so I'm just going to outsource that. You have to know how to sell your product first. You have to know how to market your product. So if you're new listening to this, you've got to learn that stuff yourself, then go and outsource it, because then you can manage it. Otherwise, you don't know how to manage it, and you've got all this stuff going. I'm not saying you have to know every intimate bit of a software, but I'm saying you have to fundamentally know the strategy of what you want, how long it should take, and what it should deliver in all aspects of your business. And a lot of people don't even know that. But if you know that, then you can outsource it, because then you can manage it.
No, 100%. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a one-man band, doing everything yourself in the beginning. You've learned it, you've seen the ropes, you see what works and what doesn't work. But then systematically start outsourcing, getting rid of this, taking this off your diary, taking this off your plate, that then you can focus on the good stuff and focus on your strengths. And I think that's how you build a business. You're not going to necessarily build it by yourself. You're going to build it by creating the right partnerships to help you with key aspects that you can do the things that you were created to do.
Exactly.
No, excellent, Mike. Mike, one last cool question for you. Mike, I'm a rocker at heart. It's quite ironic maybe from being quite an introvert and quiet guy, but if there's a mosh pit, I'm in there, I'm tall, I'm not scared, I have a lot of fun, I jump in. I really liked your song and video for your own personal song called Boracay. Can you tell me
Nice.
about that side of your persona, the rocking side? You obviously look like a rock star. How does that fit into you? Have you always been a rocker? I know you played in a band many, many years ago. Tell us a bit more about that.
It's a lovely question for me. Thank you so much for asking. I started playing guitar by ear. I've never had a lesson at age 14, started my band at 17. And we launched our first album when I think I was maybe 22. And it did quite well. And it's this funny story now, which I'll come back to. So I was basically a professional musician for about 12 years, never too far away from a guitar. As he reaches across and pulls one of his Gibson Les Pauls out of the rack next to him, which is that's my 1970 Les Paul Gold Top, which I actually used on the song that you were talking about. And we were lucky enough to play with many big bands, supported bands like Def Leppard, Cheap Trick, and things like that, Rod Stewart, the Wilson Sisters, and a few others, Living Colour, and Pantera. So, they were great days. And funnily enough, I've always been involved in music. I wrote for a lot of other artists. I've had a number of solo albums that come out. I think there's about 13 albums in total, including the band stuff that's there. And just recently, in the last few years, I worked out that there's starting to be some fan sites pop up around the world for our old band. And mainly in Argentina, Brazil, Cyprus, and Germany. They're the four main areas. And then I was in Australia late last year, and I was talking to the other guitar player from my band. He said he's been contacted from people in Brazil who apparently dress up as us at parties and actually play the album from 1980 whatever, right? Which is so cool. We've been busy for the last 6 months writing tracks for a new album. So we're going to do a new album, probably going to come out in 2026, I would think. That's when I'm aiming for it to happen. So it's not going to be something we're going to rush through. And that'll be great. I'm really looking forward to doing that, because music's just such a part of my life.
No, that's awesome to hear, Mike. And maybe you'll go on a world tour or fit in some rock shows in amongst your strategy and coaching.
Oh no, it's definitely in the wings for sure.
No, excellent, Mike. Now, Mike, we end off all of our podcasts asking every guest the same question. Mike, here in 2024, are you in the right place?
I think I'm 80% in the right place. I think what I do is perfect. It's for us, and we love what we do. We're in the throes of making some changes to our business at the moment, because every business is a constantly evolving thing, and the markets have changed a lot since COVID in terms of what's hot and what's not. Additionally, we had a lot of business in New Zealand, but that country's really suffered during COVID. I'd say we're 80% in the right place, but we know where the 100% is, and that's where we're heading.
No, that's an excellent answer, Mike. Thank you so much for your time today. Mike, if there's anyone that wants to learn more about the Circle of Excellence or any of the other businesses that you're involved in, or your strategy or coaching work, where's the best place to contact you?
John, there's two good places. Firstly, for people who want to get some insights for themselves, they should simply go to our website, www.circleofexcellencebiz, B-I-Z, circleofexcellence.biz. And right there, right at the top there, there's an assessment that they can do. It's going to give them some really good, helpful information for themselves at a very first part. And if they want to connect with us, they can connect with us directly off the assessment. We can do a strategy session for them. Otherwise, they can connect with me personally on LinkedIn. And so just go and search Mike Handcock, Handcock.
Mike, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Mike Handcock. What a fascinating discussion. Hope you've really enjoyed it. Mike, thank you so much for your time. Wish you all the best in going from 80% to 100%. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. And we will see you next time at the right place.